Okay, let's make some mountains. Open up Blender and go to Add, Mesh, and then Plane. And that'll give us our little flat surface that we're going to be using to build our mountain. Drag it over to the center and make sure it's also centered on the Z-axis. And then we're going to use S, and that'll help us scale out our plane. And we want to make it really big so we can make a nice big mountain range. Okay, and now we're going to go into edit mode, and you can use the little panel down there, or you can just hit tab to go from object mode to edit mode. And we're going to subdivide. Use W, and you can bring up a menu that'll let you subdivide, or you can go over to the left and just hit the button there and it'll subdivide the surface for you. This will help us create a lot of the nice bends and textures to our mountain. We're going to hit M, and this will bring up the Move to Layers menu, and we're going to move it to its own layer away from the sun and the camera. Okay, there's a number of ways to select stuff in Blender. You use the right click button and you have options of selecting on a point, selecting on a flat surface, or selecting on a line. We're going to use select point, and we're going to go over to the proportional editing tool and enable it. There's a number of different groupings you can have. I like to start with a base of sphere. Once we have proportional editing set up, we're going to go ahead and select a point, and we're going to hit G, and this will let us grab and move around a bunch of points. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll in and out and make the area bigger or smaller. And then you can also hit Z to lock it to only move things on the Z-axis. This will give us a nice hill base. I'm going to go ahead and make a bunch of these right now. And you can see the hill is slowly building up, getting bigger and bigger. A nice bulge up at the top. The next thing I'm going to want to do after I have a nice smooth basis, I'm going to go in and I'm going to have random instead of round for the proportional editing style. And as you can see, this will start to give us a nice erratic pattern, add some nice rocky texture to the mountain. And I'm going to go ahead and do this in a couple different places. Real strongly on top, and then just a little bit on everything in general. We're going to want to add a material, so go over to your materials panel, which is the little circle with the 4 colors in it. Add a material, give it a name. It doesn't matter where it is, just leave that section alone. Go over to the textures, which is a little red and white checkered grid, and we're going to add a blend texture, and go to the color section and select ramping, and this will allow us to add a gradient. And we're going to want this to be styled as a cube, that way we can get a good gradient white to black. Okay, so go down to mapping, and on projection move it from flat to cubed. Okay, now you have 2 different channels. One is a black transparent. Let's go ahead and select the opacity and make it all the way 100% opacity. We're going to go to blend, make sure we have a vertical blend, and then go set the Y-axis to actually be a Z-axis, and this will give us a black to white blending pattern. Next, we're going to want to go over to the object property again, and we're going to click on shading and then select shadeless, and this will make sure the sun won't get in the way of our texture mapping. Select the camera, and we're going to move it over to the center. And then if you click on the plus sign on the right of your screen view, you'll be able to have the transform properties. And we're going to set rotations X, Y, and Z all to 0. And then we're going to go over to the right and select our camera properties, and we're going to select our orthographic scale and scale our camera so it fits the entire map. Hit F12, send it to render. And this is essentially what we're going to use to bring into GIMP or Photoshop or whatever photo editing tool you want to actually start colorizing and, painting our mountain, this black and white image. And we're going to save it, and I'm using GIMP, but you can also use Photoshop to do the exact same thing, so whatever your preference is. Okay, so we're going to want to crop out all the excess sky area that rendered out in our image. Once we have our area selected, we're going to go to Image, and then we're going to crop to selection. And now that we just have our map, we're going to go over to Windows and then get the layers out. And we're going to make a duplicate of our layer and leave that one as a master copy in case we want to make more. And then we're going to go over to Color and Colorize, and we're going to try to get a nice shade of green. You could use yellow for a desert or white for snow or whatever you wanted. I'm using green because I'm trying to make grassy hills and snow-capped mountains. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer, and next I'm going to want to get a yellow so I can start actually adding some yellow tint to a lot of the base of the hills. Now let's grab our magic wand selection tool and remove parts of the upper layer that we don't need. And now if you're using GIMP, you're going to want to right click on the layer and make sure that you have opacity set up for that layer. So you're going to add the alpha channel. As you can see now that when we knock this out, you'll actually see the green of the underlayer through the top layer. Okay, now we're going to add a couple more layers. I'm just going to do this all in fast motion. Add some layers and delete what we don't need, and just add some more texture and style to what we have going on here. And while you're doing this, also keep in mind that you could take images and paint stuff directly onto this. This map is actually going to lay on top of that surface that we just made in Blender, and you can really add anything you want to it. So be creative, but this is just an example of how to get good mountain shading going on. And now what I want to do here is I'm going to add a little bit of grass texture to our actual grassy mountain area. So I'm going to pull in a little thumbnail I have of some grass, and then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to make a layer that says grass, and I'm going to paste it onto that layer. And then you got to take one more step. If you're using GIMP, you have to actually anchor that image to the layer. So we right click and anchor the layer. And now we have our little grass thumbnail. Let's move it up to the top of the layers. And then I'm going to increase the size of this a little bit and make a tile out of it to cover the entire area of the image. Now, if you were really doing this, you probably wouldn't have such a large image of the grass, but this is just an example. So this little bit of texture, even though it's probably way too big for our mountain, it'll work just fine. Next, we're going to merge all of the grass layers, and then we're going to move it down a little bit so other layers are sitting over top of it. And we're going to toggle the opacity a little bit till we get a nice blend of color, greenness, yellowness, and a little bit of that grass showing through the bottom. We're going to do Control S and save this, and in GIMP this will save as a PNG. In Photoshop you would probably do export. And we're going to bring it into Blender, and we're going to make a new texture, and this one's going to be an image, and we're going to open up and drop our mapping into the image. And it looks like our image came through. You can see in the preview, hit F12. And our mountain is rendering out with some nice looking terrain. There you go, folks. If you would want an example package of this, including a completed version of this, go to donovanh.com in the blog section and click on Blender, and you'll have to search the articles and find this, and there'll be an included zip bundle for you.